Hi everybody, welcome back to part 4 of this 132 scale Tornado build. This is the Italeri kit, and in the last episode I spent most of the time building the undercarriage bays, the main undercarriage bays. Unfortunately, due to the way that these 3D printed legs are designed, you have to fit them at this stage. It's not possible to get them in after the airframe's constructed, which is a bit unfortunate, but in my opinion it's worth it for the detail on the 3D printed legs. So we're just going to have to take a little bit of care with that. At that last episode I also taped together the main fuselage components just to make sure it was all going to go together okay, which I think it will. There's one or two areas where we've got a little bit of fettling to do, which I'll cover as we go along. The other big task for this video will be to do the intakes, which just come in the Italeri kit in 4 parts, and I'm going to have a look at how difficult it will be to hide the join on the intakes. We don't want to see a seam, but I just want to see how far back the front part of the intake takes us and how much work that involves in correcting the seam on the main part of the intake trunking. We've also got some ejector pin marks on the inside visible face of the intake trunking as well, so we're going to have to look and see how many of those need to be fixed. Certainly there's one near the front here that I'm going to have to deal with, possibly this one as well, but we'll see once we've done that test fit. So the first thing I want to do is to break the model apart. It's just taped together at the moment, and then we'll take a look at these intakes and see how much work is involved with them. So here we've got the basic fuselage bottom plate with the main gear legs in it from last time. I've put the engine bay bulkhead in as well. That adds a little bit of stiffness to the other fuselage parts, as well as holding the engines in the Italeri kit. The intakes are just a 2-part affair, as I said, and these locate onto the engine bay bulkhead, and there should be a pin, just feeling for it. So as you can see, the intake just sits on top like that, so that's a fairly positive fit. We've also got the wing mechanism, plate for the wing mechanism to fit on top here. We'll do that later. I just want to do all the work on the seams on the intake first of all, get these ready to go in. But just let's have a look at the impact that the front part of the intake has on the visibility down in here. That'll just determine how much work we do to clean these parts up. I'm actually skipping forward something like 25 steps in the Italeri instructions at this point to get to these intake fronts. I've got some more ejector pins here on the intake mouth, which we'd definitely be able to see, so they need filling in. Same on the outboard plate as well. Might as well glue these doors in. They're going in the closed position. These parts are absolutely covered in ejector pins, including on the front of the ramp itself here. So quite a bit of work to do with these parts to get them in a fit state to go on the model. Let's just take a look how much we can see with this in place. And unfortunately it's quite a lot. So I think there's no option but to fully sand the join all the way down, more or less anyway. So the first job for these intakes, and our next job in the build, is to sort out these horrible ejector pin marks on all these components. They're really quite prominent, and then I'll prime all the sections, do the assembly, and hopefully we'll be able to eliminate those horrible seam lines. Unfortunately, these are the type of ejector pins that are quite deep, so it's not possible to scrape them. You'll just remove too much material, so they do need filling. So I'm going to leave these parts to dry now, get this putty fully hardened because it's quite deep in places. Probably 24 hours, possibly even 2 days, whilst I get on with other parts of the airframe. So I'll just put these to one side and let's have a look what else we can do. So the next thing I'm going to look at, whilst I'm waiting for all that putty to dry, is the side sections of the rear fuselage. These build up like that onto the bottom plate, and there is one slight improvement we can make to the fit of this, and that is to get this little triangular section here to sit flush with the bottom plate. On my kit it just stood a little bit proud, so what I've done is just thin down the reverse face of this plastic, and that just enables it to fit in a little bit more smoothly, and we get that nice transition between the two parts. There's a little bit more work to do in it, and of course I've got the other side as well, so I'll just work on this a little bit more. There's a little bit better fit to be had there, I think. Just feel a little bit of a step under the fingernail, so I'll do a little bit more work on that, and of course the other side, to get these to fit. And then at least we know that the two side sections are going to go in without any more bother. The other thing I need to do with these two parts is to prep them for fitting this, which is the exterior detail set that I got from Nigel at the Tornado SIG a while ago. So this contains a new scoop here. It might be an exhaust actually, looking at the shape of it, but the resin one, the 3D printed one, has the better shape, and it also goes all the way in, so it's a proper duct, a full length duct. The other part that needs to go in is a section here to replace what I think is the APU exhaust. Pretty sure that's what it is. So we're going to have to cut this section out and replace it with the 3D printed part. We also get a replacement scoop for underneath the nose. That's a cooling scoop, but we don't need to do anything with that just yet. So just these two parts to sort out. Let's get this fit honed a little bit first of all. That's better, it's perfectly flush now. I think from memory this one was a little bit better out of the box. So just to show you what the fit is like without doing any work on it, you can see hopefully quite a step here, just right next to the leg. So obviously what I don't want to be doing is forcing this in and then sanding this down so close to the completed undercarriage leg. Don't want to risk damaging that at all. So we need to get the fit correct before actually putting the part on. Okay, so that's a nice smooth flush fit now. So now that we know that these two large panels are going to fit properly, we can do the mods to get these aftermarket 3D printed scoops and exhaust fitted. So this 3D printed part replaces the kit panel here. It doesn't go along the panel line though, that's a slight difficulty, so we're just going to have to judge the cut correctly. So I'm just erring on the side of caution here and putting this cut line possibly a little bit too high, but I'd rather work down to the join rather than have to fill it later on. So that should give us a little bit of wiggle room. So that is a good fit. I'm happy with that. So let's do the APU exhaust next. The improvement for the part that I've just fitted is probably a bit marginal, but this one is well worth adding. I think the detail on it is far better than on the kit, and it's a more accurate shape as well. So I think overall, for what it cost, just a few pounds, this set is probably worth it, I think. So just to take a look at the resin replacement compared with the kit, we've got this panel which is a smaller shape. This is the Italeri panel, obviously. The shape of the exhaust is different, and the detail around the exhaust panel is different as well. These little details here are quite different to the kit as well. So overall, just for the shape of this panel and the exhaust, I think it's probably worth fitting this one. Again, I'm just going to give myself a bit of adjustment room, make it slightly small, the cutout. Nearly there. So just gradual adjustments we're looking for, and just check fit all the time as you're doing the cutting, and hopefully we'll get a decent fit. It's going to need a little bit of filler around the margins. Okay, I'm happy with that now, so I'll get it glued in. Use some CA. Okay, so that's gone in pretty well. It's nice and smooth, fared in. Coat of primer will tell us how close we've got with it, but it looks okay at this stage. We've got a bit of filling to do around the edge. I just want to blend this in a little bit more. There are no panels at this point, and also we've got the remnants of the Italeri access panel just here. Obviously I couldn't cut far enough up to remove that panel, otherwise the new replacement resin panel wouldn't have fitted, it would have been too high up. But I'll do that, let it set along with all the other bits of filler that I've got on the bench. But for now, those two parts have gone in pretty well. I'm going to fill this panel with CA. And a squirt of accelerator. Okay, so that appears to be smoothed in alright, but what I'm going to do is just give the area a squirt of Mr. Surfacer, and hopefully that'll show us where we need to do any more work on fairing this panel in. Not too bad. We've got a little pinhole here, and just needs smoothing off a little bit down this edge, but overall that's pretty close. Okay, so the filler has dried on these ejector marks, and actually this has been left for probably 3 days now. I wouldn't normally do that, but I've got other projects on the bench, so that's just given this time to really set hard. So let's just clean off the excess. Just using a bit of water to reduce the burn on the plastic. Okay, the primer's dry, and that's just indicated a little bit of refinement I can make just to get those ejector pin marks completely erased. And I'm going to use some of this Mr. Surfacer 500 to do that. So I'm just going to paint this on. So looking at this intake here, you might be able to see the little pits from the filler. But we'll use the 500 to fill those in. Okay, so I'll leave that to dry, and in this case I'll probably leave it a couple of days. I've got other work going on, so I can afford to just leave this to dry thoroughly. Otherwise, especially on a deep pit like we've got on some of these, you'll just pull the Mr. Surfacer out because it won't be fully cured. Mr. Surfacer on its own wouldn't have been enough to deal with those ejector pins. They were pretty deep. So it needed the base filler just to get the worst of them out. So all the intake parts have now had a coat of Mr. Surfacer 1500 white. That's not because I'm going to be painting these white. They were a very, very light grey. And I'm going to use the mix that I use for the undercarriage bays. So at this stage, with the intakes primed, I'm going to glue the main intake trunks together, and because they're not such a great fit all the way along, I want to concentrate on this section here. This is the one that you're going to really see from the intake mouth. So that's the one that I want to concentrate on getting a really good join and closing it up as much as I can. It's very difficult to see further back, so I'm less bothered about that. They've gone together all right, and I want to leave them for a day before I do any more work to them. The next thing is to just eradicate the seam where you can see it. So really here at the front of the intake, and just a little bit at the back as well, where if you look right the way down you can see back to the engine face. So I'll do that tomorrow when this is dried up. I'll use some Milliput Superfine white. That'll obviously blend in with the white undercoat a little bit better. Till then, we'll just leave these to one side. Okay, so I'm just tidying the internal seams up as far as they can be seen. I'm not going all the way along. There's a certain area of the intake that you can't see from any angle, so you don't need to worry about that. And for it I'm using this, which is a 2-part epoxy putty. It's very adhesive, and you can use it to just push it into the seam join all the way along. And being a 2-part epoxy, it needs to be mixed thoroughly, and if you read the instructions, I think it says something like 7 minutes mixing time, which seems an awfully long time when you're actually doing it, but it is worth it. The putty goes off a lot quicker if you do stick to the instructions. And I've used this tool, which is actually a Tamiya paint mixing tool, and both ends are useful. This end has got a little spoon shape on it, which, because it's rounded on the underneath, you can get into the circular or round part of the intake at the back here. Just rub the milliput in. And this end, being a flat spatula type shape, you can draw along the seam line like that just to level it out a little bit. We're still going to have to sand it, but using this sort of tool just to blend it in just reduces that sanding time. Now, just one note of caution, or a little tip that I'd offer you if you're assembling an intake like this, which in the main is just a butt joint and quite a thin contact area as well. If you look down at the thickness of the plastic, it's not very thick, and this joint is fairly weak, especially if you're sanding backwards and forwards. It flexes, and sometimes you can crack it, and that's not something that you want when you've already filled it. So what I do is just use some styrene strip like this. This is about 0.7 thick and about 4mm wide, something like that, and just use it as a plate, if you like, along the seam like that. Just glue it in place, and it really does reinforce and strengthen that joint all the way along, so it'll resist any cracking. So just glue it up either side of the seam. And just maneuver the strip around until it's centrally on the seam like that. And when that's set, it really is going to add a lot of strength to the intake. Now here, if I'm reinforcing here, you just need to be careful, because the intake actually butts fairly closely to this bulkhead here, so you don't want to obstruct the fit of that by putting this strip in, even though it's only 0.7. So if you just mark off the position of that bulkhead where we've got to avoid. Here at the back, I'm just using a piece of styrene as a strap. There we are. It's not pretty, but it works. The fillers dried on these intakes. Now they just need cleaning up a little bit, and it's probably an area where you might want to adapt some sanding tools to get into all the length of the intake. I just use these, which are sheets of Tamiya sanding sponge taped onto a coffee stirrer, and they just enable you to get right the way down into the intake and clean that seam line up. This is probably one of the jobs that I dislike on jet aircraft, is trying to get the seams nice and tidy. And actually what I usually find is that the work that you go to is probably a little bit over the top for what you end up being able to see on the completed model. And that's particularly the case when you get the engine face on the back, which just blacks everything out. So it's very difficult to make out any flaws further back on the intake particularly. I think that'll do the job. It's hard to tell at this stage. Once you get the primer on, the next coat of primer, you'll be able to tell if any more work needs to be done, but for the moment I think that looks alright. These are the mounting plates for the wing mechanism. So I'll make sure there's a good bond on these, because there's a little bit of weight on the wings to support. So I'll give these a wash down now and get another coat of white primer on, and then I can apply the top coat and these will be finished. This might seem a bit of a departure doing the engines at the moment, but the reason why I am putting these together is because I need the front of the engine faces to go at the back of the intakes that I've just been preparing. Now Italeri give us a number of options for displaying engines on the GR4. The first is to build them up like this and install them both into the aircraft. The second is to have one removed, and they give you a little trolley to fit the display engine onto. Or you can do what I'm doing, which is remove the engines altogether. And I'm going to use just the front section of the engine with the front bank of compressor blades. And I don't need the whole engine, because this rear section, which actually protrudes out the back of the aircraft, this piece here, I've got a resin replacement for that, so I don't need the back part of the plastic engine. So I don't need to worry too much about preparing it as thoroughly as I might do otherwise. This is the other one that I've already done, so we'll just sew off the part that we need. Now for the metallic areas of this build, so these engine faces and also the exhaust nozzles, I'm going to be using these new to me extreme metal from AK. And the first thing we have to do with them is to use this black base, which comes out as a gloss black, over which we use the colour itself, in this case stainless steel. Okay, the intakes are finished and ready to fit now. Cleaned all those up as you've seen previously and given them a couple of coats of satin, very pale grey, this isn't white. And now we can put them in position on the lower plate, which has already got the undercarriage bays in, as you can see. Now with the intakes in position, I can put the side panels in. I've already checked the fit of these and adjusted the fit here where this triangular plate is, so that goes in fine now. Now again, I'm not convinced about Iteleri's engineering at this point, so I'm reinforcing this connection with some styrene strip, a bit like I did with the intakes. And I'll repeat that on the other side. So that's all bound up. These straps have strengthened the assembly. I've put some angle styrene in here as well, just to pull these side pieces tight into the undercarriage base. So all in all, that whole assembly is quite well reinforced. So I just want to tidy up this join here between the two parts, and for that I'm just going to run some Mr. Surfacer into the join line. This is Mr. Surfacer 500, which is the grade that I use to reduce the effect of these very deep Italeri panel lines. So hopefully these will blend in with the rest of the moulded detail on the aeroplane. This needs to dry now, then I'll just get some lacquer thinners on a cloth and just wipe it smooth. I'll fit the engine faces and then the intakes will be complete. Just use a bit of CA to fix these in place. It's really pretty difficult to see the engine fronts on a Tornado. I certainly couldn't capture it on camera for you, but it does at least blank off the back of the intake. So with that lower part of the rear fuselage done, just got a little bit of tidying up to do on this seam line, but it's nearly there. So I'll just put the lower part to one side. Let's just have a look what we have to do here. The first thing I want to do is to get the air brakes fitted, and they're going to be in the closed position in our case. I'm not really sure what the point of these parts is. I can see the purpose for the opened air brake configuration, but not the way we're building it, but I'll follow the instructions anyway. Now, straight out of the box, these air brakes are not a great fit in the closed position. So this is one of those areas where the fit of these parts isn't the best, and you have to just make some little adjustments just to get them to fit properly. It's just an indication really that the kit is slightly what I would describe as second division. If Tamiya had moulded this, for example, that would have just dropped in and you wouldn't have been able to tell the difference between the air brake and the rest of the fuselage. But these Italeri kits are a little bit more of a challenge than that, so you've got to do a bit more work. So just tiny little adjustments, and eventually the part does drop in fairly nicely actually. Don't want to go too far obviously, otherwise it'll just be too slack and the panel opening will be too big and we'll have to fill it. So a little bit at a time. What we're after here is just a nice flush fit of the air brake into the recess. These are some raised rivets which obviously add the detail if you've got these open, but they're a bit more problematic. They obstruct the fit in the close position, so I'm just scraping those off. Okay, that's the top panel ready, and the next job is to build the wings. I'll be building this model with the flaps and slats deployed. It is an option in the kit. So this assembly is the mechanism for aligning the pylons when the wing is swept backwards and forwards. And that's a bit toy-like really. It's not something I'm going to have on the finished model. So eventually I will glue these solid. But for the time being they're just useful to line the pylons up when I get to that stage. So at this point we can glue the wings together. These little transparencies here on the wingtips are shown in the Italeri instructions, and I've fitted them, but I wasn't sure really what they were because I couldn't see them on any of my reference photographs. So I had a quick check with my friend Phil, who's really helped me a lot with this build. He advises me that these lamps were only present on Italian aircraft. So it's one of those areas where Italeri have designed the kit for multiple variants, I think, but they just fail to tell you in the instructions when they're not applicable to the GR4. So Phil's really been generous in his advice whilst I've been building this, and has actually supplied quite a few parts, aftermarket parts for the build. So it's really appreciated. Thanks for your help on this, Phil. These are the upper wing speed brakes, which again I'm going to be attaching closed. And again I want to get a nice clean fit of these. So it's just a case of some dry fitting, sanding down until you get the fit that you're after. They're actually not bad, but they just do benefit from a little bit of work on them. So I can just leave these wings to set up now for a while. We'll give them a clean up later on. So I want to go back to the main fuselage element now and just tidy up that Mr. Surfacer, and I'll probably give it a coat of primer at this stage just to check the work so far. These parts are for the wing gloves and they're in vinyl in the kit, and I was a bit worried that sometimes vinyl plastic is hard to cement, but I've done one already and it seems to work. This part unfortunately is cracked and just broken at the bottom, but that'll be alright. We also in the kit get some vinyl tyres. I'm not going to be using these. I've got some resin ones from the undercarriage set, so got a spare pair of Tornado tyres there. These vinyl gloves fit onto this frame, and that ensures that you locate it in the correct place. Just gives a bit of solidity as well to the flexible vinyl. So all the parts are prepared now for assembling all the fuselage components, so the nose section and the top of the fuselage. And what I've also done is put a coat of primer on the 3 individual sections. Just easier to get the primer on whilst the components are a bit more manageable like this. So before fitting the wings, which I built earlier and I've also put a coat of primer on, I just want to make sure that these gloves are absolutely dry, because there's a little bit of friction between the vinyl and the wing, and I don't want to pull it out, because once I've got the top of the fuselage assembled, I'm not going to be able to get in to reassemble it. So I'll just give it an hour or so to dry. It's better safe than sorry, I think, and we'll get the wings on next. And whilst I'm waiting for these to dry, I'm just going to come back to the nose section. This was the first thing I put together in the first episode or so, and we need to start to work out how to put the intake mouth together. So the method of assembly in the Italeri kit is to put these inner parts of the intake onto the nose section like that, and then this whole nose section slides in, and the 2 sections of the intake should lock together. That's the theory anyway. And what I've done in preparation for that is a couple of things. I've put a little styrene tab here that'll just help to align the trunking when we come to slide it in. And the other thing is that I've applied a coat of the medium sea grey on the areas behind this plate, because it's very difficult to get a smooth coat of paint in an area like that. So you can see the space down the back there. It's very difficult to get paint in without it swirling around and getting that dusty effect where the paint dries before it hits the plastic. The other thing that I've done here is mask off. You can see here this very pale grey, almost white colour, which is the actual intake ducting, and this forward section, which is the medium sea grey. And it's worth checking your references when you're masking off the intakes, because the demarcations did vary a little bit from one airframe to the next. So I've got some good reference photographs of this particular airframe, which shows us that this is where the demarcation is. There's also a black section around the inside as well, but I'll mask off that and paint it later on when I come to assemble the rest of the outer intake. I'm fitting this bulkhead even though the engines aren't going in. It hopefully will just add a little bit of rigidity to the fuselage once I put the top part on. Okay, we'll get the wings in and the top fuselage installed now. So the panels with the wing gloves have dried, they're nice and solid. So putting the wings in won't dislodge them, hopefully. This is a tricky exercise because there's so many things to do all at once. Now if you remember the rods that are fitted inside the wings which move the pylons, the ends of them have this hole in here, and that engages with these pins on this upper plate. So not only have we got to hold the wings in place, we've got to fit the top deck of the fuselage and engage those pins all at the same time. So I could do with an extra pair of hands really. I'm just checking that those pins are engaged. Which they are. So just to hold that in position, Italeri provide a couple of screws which go all the way through to fix the wings into place. So here we've got some pretty big gaps that are going to need to be dealt with. What I've done here is just run some extra thin CA into the gap, followed by some accelerator. So that's provided a bond all the way along, so we can put some filler in that and sand it down later on. I'll do that next time. So I've got some more of our angle, styrene angle here. And I'm just going to cut a short length just to insert into this joint, just to reinforce this here at the front. It's the only glue point that we've got on this forward part of the fuselage, so this will strengthen that connection. So now we can finally put the nose section into position. Now this is quite a tricky fit. I've test fitted it a couple of times now. It does go, but it needs a little bit of persuasion. Okay, so the model's suddenly got very big, too big for the camera really. So I'm going to have to move to the other bench and swap the camera viewpoint over so you can take a look at what the aircraft looks like now. Okay, hopefully that gives you a bit better view. Still a big model in 132 scale. And generally I think the airframe's gone together reasonably well. There's still quite a bit of work to do, which I'll pick up in the next episode. And it's mainly around the fuselage here, where we've got quite a big gap. This is the resin insert that I fitted, and I've probably just got it a little bit too far aft. so it's created this gap. So I'll shim that with some thin styrene and fill it in. And here around the rear fuselage we've also got some more fill-in work to do as well. But generally the intakes have gone together alright as far as I've done them. So all in all, that's not too bad for this part of the build. So next time we'll finish the fuselage off by doing that seam work. We'll build the rest of the intakes, and I'm going to add a little bit more detail into the intakes for the ramp mechanism. And then I'll build the fin and the spine. And then at that point, I think we can start to do a little bit of painting on this one. So that'll be coming up in a couple of weeks' time. I've got another bit of work to do on the border Lancaster. So I'll do that next week and then come back to you with the Tornado. So thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you're enjoying your modelling if that's what you're doing. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.